Welcome back, Hacker Science. We are going to take a look at some of the tools that are used in the plant science industry. So, last time we looked at some careers, but a lot of these careers wouldn't be what they are without the tools that people have to use in order to do those jobs. So, we'll take a look at some of the tools that are related to working with plants, especially ornamental type plants. Not necessarily as much with agronomy and things like that, but mostly with your ornamental type plants. Um, Before we do that, though, you do have to be very careful whenever you're working with any type of tool, plant science tools in particular, but making sure that you are choosing the right tool for the job. Um, Sometimes we have people who get a little over anxious, overzealous, a little over the top about some of the tools that they use. I'll tell you a story when we get a little bit further with some of the tools that we're going to be talking about, where we had some interesting things happen with some plant science tools. But you always want to make sure that you are using the correct tool for the job and that you are taking care of them. If they can cut trees, if they can cut plants, they can cut you. So you want to make sure that you are careful when you're using them and that you are careful where you put them. If you get sand or dirt onto blades and then you close those blades, then you are going to wear those blades down and they're going to have to be sharpened. So you do want to make sure that you are careful where you put tools, especially cutting tools. So one of the first ones we're going to take a look at, this is a bulb planter. And to be perfectly honest, I have planted a lot of bulbs, but very rarely do I actually use a real bulb planter. A lot of times I just use a little trowel and dig a hole and transplant the bulb. But I guess if I were doing a lot of bulbs, I would maybe use one kind of like this one down here. It does help to, you're going to use the, I'm trying to point out with my finger, which is not working. You're going to use this, which is actually going to open up the bulb planter when you put it in the ground. And with this handheld one, you would actually dig down into the ground, and then this little release right here is going to help to open up. You stick the bulb in, cover it back up, and you go. And so that's a pretty simple tool, but not the only way to plant a bulb. It's just something to help speed up the process a little bit. This looks like a pocket knife, and in many ways, you probably could use a pocket knife to do the same thing, but typically the blades are not quite sharp enough unless you have spent a lot of time sharpening your blade. A grafting tool is a tool that is going to be used specifically for preparing plants for grafting, which that makes no sense to you at all right yet because we haven't talked about grafting. But literally with grafting, you are putting two parts of a plant together. You might be putting two actual plants together. Whenever I was in college, I had an opportunity to do some grafting for a plant propagation lab, and we took two different species of peaches and put them on the same tree. And we did that by grafting. So you are literally, maybe say this is your rootstock, which is the tree that you have planted in the pot or in the soil, and maybe you want to put another type of peach tree on it, or you want to have two types of apples on the same tree. You could literally take a piece of another tree and you can stick it down into that slot right there. This is only one type of grafting. And then you could wrap it up with what's called a budding rubber, which is basically like a disintegrating, biodegrading rubber band, and you leave it there. And eventually they will grow together, and you will have DNA, you'll have the genetics from both plants on the same plant itself. So that's grafting, and also budding is the same thing. Just uses a smaller piece of the plant. But you're going to use one of these tools in order to cut those so that you can get them ready to bind. You have probably used one of these many times. We usually call it a spigot, but the correct term for it is actually a hose bib. But we have a couple of these in the greenhouse, and I'm sure you've used these many times in your life to turn off the water supply or turn on a water supply. Technically not a spigot or a faucet, but a hose bib is the technical name. Okay, these are lopping shears, and so lopping shears are typically going to be used whenever you're trying to cut large branches, not something so big that you would need a chainsaw, but up to like 3/4 of an inch would be something you would use lopping shears on. So whenever you are pruning something, this would be for the larger branches. And basically, you've got these curved blades here, and they just is what we call bypass shears, and you have these long handles for getting the word that I can't think of right now. Um, anyway, you're going to be able to have a lot more pressure on it because of having those long handles on there, and it helps you to be able to cut larger branches. Pruning saws are going to help you to be able to cut even larger branches. So if you have something that's more than about 3/4 of an inch in diameter, you want to go for something like a pruning saw, or even a chainsaw if it really gets to that point. But a pruning saw is going to be more helpful for something that's a little bit bigger. There are also tools called pole pruners, and the pole pruner is actually this saw would be on top of a pole, and there actually is a set of pruners on there as well that you can use to cut trees that are way up above your head. So pruning saws are typically going to be used when you have something that's just a little bit bigger. These are pruning shears. These are just regular old hand shears. We use these a lot. We use these for taking cuttings in the greenhouse. We use these for taking cuttings around campus. We use these for cleaning things up around campus, especially if we are cutting something that's fairly small. Pruning shears, there's a couple different types. These are called bypass pruners. You just want to make sure that you are taken care of when you use them, and you'll have an opportunity to use them when we go into the greenhouse. Those of you who are in cohort A or B, because you'll actually be taking some cuttings that you will be able to take home with you at the end of the semester. Okay, so I promised you a story about using tools improperly. One of my first few years here, I had a student who was, well, I'll be honest, she's a little scary. Right? She wasn't scary too much to me, but she was one of those people that was fairly intimidating. And we were up in the upper courtyard, the one that's closest to the office, and we were trimming the crepe myrtles that were up there. And this girl took a pair of head shears, which is used for trimming and shaping shrubbery. That's typically going to be things like just taking the top off of a shrub, shaping up a shrub, not huge limbs. But this girl took a pair of head shears and she cut a huge limb, probably that was 3/4 of an inch. Really should have been using lopping shears. She used head shears to cut off that limb, and so after that, we had a tree that was completely lopsided, and we had to go back in and reshape the entire tree. And I'm not sure if those head shears actually ever worked again, but make sure that you're using the correct tool for the job. If it is giving you too much of a hard time whenever you're trying to cut something, you probably want to use a tool that's a little bit different. If the tool is not working, you probably want to find a tool that will work, using the proper tool for the proper job. So this is a soil auger. We do have one of these. We use these for actually getting soil samples, and we will use these to take just a bit of soil out of the ground. We mix up different samples, and we can send them off to an agronomic lab in Raleigh. They'll test the soil. They'll tell us what is in the soil, what we need in the soil, depending on what we plan to do with it. So the soil auger helps us to be able to take those samples that we can use for determining what nutrients our soil has and needs. You also have soil thermometers. We don't typically use these a whole lot. You can, though, especially in something like a greenhouse, if you have some very sensitive seeds that need to be germinated at a certain temperature. The soil thermometer will help you to figure that temperature out and make sure that you're where you need to be. But we just don't typically use it. But you do just stick it down into the soil and figure out if it's the temperature that you want it to be. Basically works like most other thermometers. This is another way to obtain soil for testing. The auger is going to do a better job of digging. The soil tube is typically going to be used in something like a field that has already been plowed or softened up. The soil tube is just going to be, it's not going to cut into the ground as well as something like a soil auger would do. And finally, the last tool, this is a water breaker. We use these a lot in our greenhouse. And the reason is just because we do have a lot of pressure. As the pressure comes into the greenhouse, if we were just to spray the plants down at full speed, then we could do a lot of damage. And so we don't want to do that. The water breaker just helps to reduce the amount of impact that the water pressure is making whenever we water plants. And so we use these quite a bit. And so we have watering wands that have a water breaker on the end of them, and we use those fairly often. So some of the tricks of the trade and the tools that we use whenever we're working in plant science, you'll have an opportunity to work with some of these. For those of you who are face to face, you'll have a chance to get your hands on some of these and do a little bit of work with them as we go throughout the next couple of weeks. Um, Next time, we'll be looking at some plant biotechnology. It's probably the biggest area of biotechnology that we talk about because we really do more with plants and biotechnology than anything else. So we'll be talking about that specifically next time. Until then, take care, and I will talk to you guys later.